Good afternoon, YouTubers. Andy Kirby here again. Just want to say thanks to all our latest YouTube subscribers. We've been quite overwhelmed in the amount of views and stuff we've been getting on the channel. So hopefully we're doing something right. If we're not, please tell us. Or if there's things you want us to do, just let us know in the comments. So yeah, and if you're not already a subscriber, then feel free to subscribe, because we've been posting quite a lot of sort of DMR radio and embedded computers videos of late, and yeah, so you can keep up to date with all the latest trends. We try and keep things nice and fresh and pretty raw, so you're seeing products without any kind of fluff. Yeah, so the other week I was quite impressed that Hytera had managed to get the PD375 so quick. That's Hytera UK. And yeah, so we managed to get some of these radios in stock, and this is just really nice. This is kind of like the new improved version of the PD365. Now, those of you that know that one know that it's a great little DMR stroke FM radio, which obviously like dual mode, fits in the pocket and doesn't really suffer too much on performance in terms of considering what it's got for an antenna. You can see very small antenna. These come in two variants. They've started doing two variants now. One's 400 megahertz to 450, I think, and the other one's 430 to 480. And originally they were saying we're going to get the 400 to 450 version, which is kind of okay for sort of amateur usage because you can use all the 430 to 440 band, but what we really wanted was the 430 to 480, because then you can use them on the PMR frequencies as well, and also PMR 446 and everything else, if you like that sort of thing. So yeah, we've managed to get the 430 to 480, which was a nice surprise when it turned up. And on first impressions, it's a really smart little radio. Size comparison to, say, like something like your let's move that microphone out of the way, like your X1P. It's actually a tad smaller. It's kind of the same sort of thickness as well, in that respect. So quick little breakdown. You've basically got 3 programmable keys. You've got your normal menu and back button, and then you've got this kind of up, down, left and right sort of pad to kind of do your navigation. When I first picked up one of these, it was actually a 365, and I kind of got in a weird old mess with the menu, because what you do is when you hit the menu key, you get taken into this menu. Now, like, logic suggests that you would go right and left to actually kind of move through the menus, but you don't. You actually go up and down. So it's a bit weird. It's a bit bizarre to start with, but once you get used to it, it's actually fine, no problem at all. But I'm sure with a simple firmware change, they could just change that straight away, and just make that the right way around. That aside, starting off on a negative, but that aside, your volume control is basically sort of on the left and right, very quick and easy to adjust. I actually like these sort of digital. There's X1Ps are springing into life. I actually quite like these digital based volume controls, mainly because you're not going to knock it up the top. You're not going to, when it's in the pocket, it's not going to move or change or anything like that. You can pretty much just set it, and so long as the button isn't touched, it's going to stay in the same place. Also, they tend to be. You find that anything that's got like a kind of digitally controlled volume control, it's not a rule of thumb, but it just seems to me that you're kind of more, how do we put it? It's basically like a mobile phone. So when you've got an analog volume control, you tend to get a bit of analog noise on the output. I know it's not to do with that, but I think it's how things are controlled inside, like the audio amplifier. Even on the X1P, you get a bit of a hiss in the background, even though there's no audio coming through on the lowest setting. Whereas on these ones, it's actually pretty absolute. So when that's off, it's a very low volume, and it's off as well. Saying that, it does make a little bit of a pulse as the amplifier inside opens, but I don't know. That's just what it is. So I mean, anyone that's familiar with the 365 radio, we haven't got one here. Never really bothered to get one because there's so many there are so many small little radios out in the market. It's not really worth having. I didn't really see in our lineup that it doesn't really fit what we were going to do. But with this 375, it just had to be done because it's actually a vast improvement over the previous one. So highlights, really, you've got a 2000 milliamp hour battery in here. I'm not going to take that out. I've decided not to. So it's a 2000 milliamp battery, which is on the high side for something this small. Even this X1P's only got an 1100, and sort of initial tests show that this will just stays on standby for a couple of days, no problem at all. You have no problem with that. And we've done like a sort of an FM test and some FM repeaters and things like that, not digital, and had quite a long QSO on that, a long conversation on a local repeater, which incidentally was about 15-20 miles away, and this just doesn't bat an eyelid. It has no problem accessing all of the local repeaters the same way the X1P does. Obviously, you're probably going to find that the X1P does a better job because it pushes more power. It's got sort of more of an efficient antenna, but this is very, very, very compact, and it will literally just fit in a pocket. So it's a 3 watt output. It will do 3 watts and 1 watt on low power. And as standard, they kind of set this side button here to do the power, and I've just left that as it is because it's actually quite useful doing that. What I've found is when the battery gets on the low side, what it will do is it will just you'll see high on here on the screen, but when you transmit it'll actually just go down to low. It will just go down to low power, just obviously because it doesn't want to pull the battery voltage right down so that the thing turns off, which is quite neat. But first of all, I thought, well, why is that dropping down to low? But it turned out that obviously the battery was on a very low one battery point. So yeah, you get three battery segments on there, which indicate how charged the battery is. So it charges by USB. You've got a USB port up here, micro USB, nice, because that's what we like to see on on the mobile devices these days, and that's what you get on this. In the box, you get a mains USB charger, which is fine, 1 amp, 1000 milliamp or 1 amp hour charger, and that just works just fine. Charges up, I think probably as Logic says, a couple of hours, 1 amp an hour. So that's what we found on that. What happens when you plug the charger in as well? It's quite nice. You get obviously the meter goes up as it's charging, but if you turn the radio off, you get a 3-segment battery display on the radio, which actually shows that it's charging. I'll say that's nice, but it's something you take for granted because some of the other radios don't even do this. Like the say like the Yaesu FT2D, you get that meter, but it's not really. It's more of a timed type thing. It doesn't seem to indicate like a smartphone does. It's a bit of a weird old beast, that one. And you can't actually have the radio. You can't really use the radio or do anything whilst the charger's plugged in. It gets in a bit of a faff and starts resetting things like that. Even on low power, you can't really do that. But this, you could just have that plugged in and it just works. You can actually transmit if you really want to, and everything else. So it's kind of like a smartphone, and that's what I'm really fond of with these sorts of devices. Because it's getting to the point where it's like a crossover sort of device. So the audio is nice and punchy and loud as well. Like, got a speaker behind here. It kicks out. I don't know the exact output, but it kicks out a substantial volume. and the received audio from reports seems absolutely fine. Other features, so if you just look through the menu, you've got contacts, which you can just go into by hitting this, and then you've got favourites, which you can actually assign on the radio itself, which is quite nice. You can just do that, without having to go into the CPS. This is what I mean about the menus. It's funny how it works. You will get used to it. Messages, so text messages. Now, obviously, there's no keypad, so you can't really create a message as such. But if you assign some messages in the CPS software, you can then go into quick text here, and then you can just say, I've done a few here, things like this. You can just send those out. Good for replies, not good for sort of instigating a message or something like that. But it's good for replies. One thing about this is really, really cool is the fact that it makes for an absolutely brilliant pager. I'll show you something pretty nifty. So here we've got obviously the PD375 set on that channel. We've got a mobile radio there, and here's our sort of Hytera dispatch software. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to type. You can type a text message in this box. It's already one in there, and then basically just send this out. So if you click on send over here, and then what happens is it just comes up like that, and then you can just then go, okay, we read the message, hello Hytera, and you can see up here it's saying hello Hytera, and then you can say, for example, just they've got replay in the menu. I think they need to change that, and then you can just say, all received, and then send that back out. Send, and then you should, in theory, as it won't work, come back on there. But anyway, for some reason, oh, I know what it is. We're on the wrong tab. There you go, all received. So you can do that as many times as you want on there. So this software's got multiple tabs for different for your different contacts. So if you just send a quick text here and say hi to M6JKA, send contact, and then you can send that to the one I've got there, and there you go, it comes in on there. So that's quite nifty. So use as a pager, pretty cool. Unfortunately, there's no vibrate, but it'd be good if there was. But using it as a pager is actually really good in certain situations, sort of commercial applications, things like that. You could deploy a bunch of these, and then just merrily just send out your information on here. It's a bit blurry. Yeah, just send out your information that way. So where were we going? Got sort of sidetracked on there. We were still talking about the menu, weren't we? And basically, messages, call logs, and then you've got scan. Scan's good. You can assign obviously all your scan channels. There's no roaming on this one, which may upset some, but that's just really the tier of the radio. It's not meant to be a massively systems orientated radio, so you can't do roaming. Settings, you've got all your usual settings like radio settings and device settings. If you go into the radio settings, you can do power level, keypad lock, backlight, LED, tones. I've turned all the tones off because it gets a bit annoying having everything bleeping all the time for this sort of situation. But obviously, if you want to hear when text messages and things come in, then that's what you can do. And then sort of basic settings in there, and they've all been activated in the CPS on this particular one when I did the programming. So there's it's not huge amounts of stuff to program in, but there's not huge amounts of settings in this radio. It's quite minimal, but it does work incredibly well. So CPS software, with this you have to use the dedicated CPS software for this particular radio. Well, it's actually the same software as you use with the PD375. So yeah, it's exactly the same. There's nothing different about that. You can't load PD375 code plugs into this. It won't let you do that because it's a different model number, which is kind of a shame because it means you have to create a completely new one. And the PD365 or 3 series, they call it a PD3X series CPS. That what it does is it's a different software to the other radio. So for the X1P, you're using a different CPS. If anyone didn't know that, and you don't it's not quite as powerful as the sort of higher tier radios CPS, because you can't just view an entire. Well, I haven't found out how to do this. Please, someone tell me if there is. You can't just click on this channel folder and see the entire channel list like you can on the normal or the higher tier CPS, the CPS 7, I think it is, which is kind of a bit of a bugbear, because what you can do in that is you can just take a code plug in another CPS and just copy chunks of channels from one CPS to another, and on this you can't do that. The only way I've found way of copying channels is what you have to do is you have to click on one of these. If you go copy, and then you paste over another channel, or when you create a new channel, you just go insert channel like there. Now, if you copy this channel and then go to the new one that's created, the new one you see is blank, it's got nothing really on it. And then if you go paste, then it fills it out. That's the only way you can copy on the PD36 or PD3X CPS software. It's the only way you can actually copy. So yeah, it's a bit of a pain. You've got to recreate, and I had to create a new code plug completely for this one. I couldn't use an existing PD365 one. I could use it to sort of run side by side and just copy it across manually, but you can't even copy and paste from one PD3X CPS to another one. So yeah, Hytera, if you're watching, that would be a good thing to be able to do. You can import contacts, in the up here you can actually do sort of import and export contacts, but to be honest, we don't really have a lot of contacts in there anyway. It's only really your TX basic talk groups and things like that, so you can't really do that. So that's another thing about it, but it's just programmed. Once you've got it all programmed, it's a piece of cake. Let me see, I've got here the programming lead as well. This doesn't come in the box, but basically it's like a USB to serial. It's a programming lead, but basically it's not just a normal USB, micro USB. Trying to do it with one hand, it's not easy. It's like a bit of spaghetti, this thing. So yeah, like a micro USB on one end, and then normal people would think, it's a USB connector on the other end. Fine, I'll just use a normal USB lead then. Well, no, it won't work, because in there is a USB to serial adapter, and then on Windows you need the driver, which is easy to find online, to actually get it to talk to the device. So no using standard USB leads here, I'm afraid. You have to buy the right one. The charge one's different. You can use any sort of USB charger lead. So you could plug this into a PC and just get it to charge, no problem at all. What else? So yeah, another thing I did say over on Twitter was the fact that it stands up. You sort of take that for granted, because if you've got another small radio, this won't just sit on the desk nice and easy. It's a bit of a weird shape. I do like this SL5, that 4000 though, but you see, you can't just have it sitting on the desk. It just doesn't really want to work. It kind of ends up like a phone. Advantage is, obviously, if it's up in the air, then it's going to pick up the signal probably a little bit better. Sensitivity of the receiver, pretty damn good actually. I've done a test where there's a distant station, put two radios side by side like that. X1P has the leading edge, but not a lot in it. in terms of using the stock antennas, no problem at all. So I think it's a winner, really. It's a great little device for having as either a covert type radio or a pager in some situations, or just a simple grab and go little transceiver. And the fact that it does FM as well is pretty good. You're getting quality from a brand like Hytera, but not really at the expense of kind of Motorola. And the Hytera tends to be a little bit more open to anyone using these radios, like hams or commercial, whereas Motorola tends to just frown upon the ham side, which is why a lot of their repeaters sort of systems don't really like to be connected to anything else. But that aside, the quality is very, very good. You see some of these little Hytera, which is actually like the kind of, it's not really a rip-off, but they've just called themselves Hytera to try and appeal to people, I suppose. There's been reports on the MD380s not actually being that great on the FM receive, which is a couple of people I've spoken to have said, what are these DMR radios like on FM, because on the Hyteras it's not that great. Well, that's probably just down to it's a very cheap radio. It works very good. It is a good radio on digital, but apparently the FM is a bit rubbish. So I don't know. Maybe others will say they've found better, but some people I've definitely noticed some people have said that on there anyway. So the fact that you can use it on FM as I say, as FM as well as DMR is a really good one, because you can't do that on things like the SL4000 that I brought out earlier. You can't do that on there, and sometimes you might just want to, you might want an analog system. You might want to just have an analog frequency on there, or program in a bunch of repeaters or simplex channels, things like that, for different circumstances, and it just gives you that flexibility of being able to do it. But there you go. I really like it. So well done, Hytera, for that. It's nice to see new stuff coming out that does actually have some benefits over. They're pushing the technology forward, and it feels that way. It feels that this is a development in an area where they're sort of harnessing new technology to make things smaller. Like, it's got a big battery in there. It doesn't feel like a toy. I thought the PD375 felt a little bit like a PMR 446 radio. It was a bit small, and small's fine, but it just looks a little bit unprofessional, in my opinion, anyway. Whereas this actually feels, this I think is some sort of metal. It's definitely metallic, this, because when you come in from the cold, that is actually a lot colder than the rest of it. That's technical thing. Anyway, there you go. That's the PD375. We are doing them at cloudstow.com, and grab one for Christmas.